Welcome, everyone, to the third Thursday meetup of the West Orlando WordPress Meetup Group. I'm Rob Watson, a co-organizer and host. West Orlando WordPress is an official WordPress meetup group and is affiliated with the main WordPress Orlando and WordCamp US meetup groups. WordPress powers 35 to 40% of the websites on the internet. Popularity amongst more users means hackers are on the lookout for loopholes in the system and continuously develop methods to target WordPress websites. Though it is impossible to deep dive into each and every topic within WordPress security, this presentation will cover common WordPress vulnerabilities and different ways to protect your website against it. Our presenter, Neha Patel, has presented with us before, and we are so happy to have her back for another discussion. Neha is a web developer and loves doing creative stuff, biking, reading about health these days in her free time. From a young age, she has loved helping people, and she works full-time as a web developer and owns a small business where she helps people with web design, development, and marketing. When time permits, she volunteers at Ladies Learning Code and also teaches coding for kids and adults. She has been a featured speaker at various WordCamps in the past few years and has found it to be a really great experience. At this point, I'd like to invite everyone to mute their microphones for the presentation. Neha, thank you for being our presenter this evening. The time is now yours.
I am a WordPress developer, and I started using WordPress a few years ago. And I love how WordPress community is always so close and close to each other. Everyone is so close to each other and like sharing information. And there's so much going on within the WordPress community all the time, which is great. I'll just share my slides and let's dive in. Now, our today's topic, WordPress security issues and solutions. It's a very big topic, and you can literally write an entire presentation on the subtopics that we are going to cover in this presentation. But here's what you can expect from today's presentation. I will try to give you an overview of all the topics that I know, and which by no means is 100% complete, even after my 101% efforts. I want to give you as much as information possible on different vulnerabilities that come with WordPress, and then we'll discuss some possible solutions for those vulnerabilities. Also, keep in mind that the presentation was made taking into consideration the audience range, which is from non-developer to developers. So there will be certain topics which you might think are not very obvious, but we still want to cover it. And you never know, you might just catch some information which will be very obvious, but it will serve you as a refresher. I will link all the resources and these topics in an accompanied blog post at the end. So don't worry about noting anything. If you want, you can note down questions or slides that you have questions about, or if you have suggestions about, but don't worry about noting down any kind of information because everything is listed in the blog post that I'll share in the end. I also wanted to let you know that I am by no means a WordPress security expert. I'm still learning, and I'm just sharing my experience with you guys in terms of WordPress security and WordPress security solutions and the vulnerabilities that comes with WordPress websites or any website in general. First, before we dive into the topic, let's start with a short quiz. What percentage of websites don't use a CMS that we know of and monitor? I'm going to give you three options: 37.1%, 45.5%, and 40%. Feel free to just unmute yourself or you can comment. Any answers? 45.5%. That's wrong.
I was going to say that. I was going to say 37.1.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the correct answer, which means 37.1% are static websites or use custom CMSs. Let's say most of them use custom CMSs. So the rest of them are the websites that use a CMS that we know of, like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, Shopify, etc., etc. Right? So that leaves us with 63% of the websites. How many of those 63% of the websites use WordPress? 65.5%, 50%, or 40.5%? Any guesses? Brian, Rob?
65%.
That's correct. Actually, wait, no. That's not correct. It's 40%, actually. 40% is the correct answer, but that is a CMS market share of 64.5%. That means out of all the CMSs, WordPress covers 64.5%, which means more popularity, which means advanced features, which means if you want to develop a new feature or functionality on your website, it's going to be very easy for you. But which also means WordPress is so popular amongst people that there is so much knowledge sharing and ease of access for people to learn, and attackers constantly on the lookout to find vulnerabilities. Hence, our today's topic, WordPress security. Everyone good so far?
Yep.
Awesome. Now, let's take a look at some WordPress security issues or vulnerabilities. We'll go over a short checklist of WordPress vulnerabilities or security issues that WordPress owners have to deal with. And after that, we'll go over a list of measures. And if you have questions throughout the presentations, make sure to note down the slide, and we'll discuss that after the presentation. WordPress security problems. I'm just going to list them out right now, but we'll go over each and every topic after I list them out. Brute force attacks, SQL injection, weak code, malware, denial of service, and a few more that I haven't listed here, but there's like a small list of things that I'll discuss in the end. Let's go over the first one, brute force attacks. This is not so obvious, but very easy to fall prey to, and prey to type of security defect, and it lies in the hands of a WordPress developer. This method uses a simplest way to get access to your website, the login page. An attacker will try different combinations of username and passwords until a perfect combination is found. Now, you might think, how many times a person can try different combinations, right? But why do all the work when you can just create a bot or just write a script, right? Attackers use automated scripts in order to find the perfect match for username and login combinations, and then gain access to your website. If everyone here already uses WordPress since a long time, you may already know this. But for someone who's new, this is not very obvious. Such a common issue, it has several solutions, but still website owners fail to secure the login page and on average, thousands of users, thousands of websites are hacked due to this type of security vulnerability, brute force attacks. SQL injection. What is SQL? So if you're new to WordPress, SQL is an abbreviation for Structured Query Language. It is a special programming language used to manage databases. WordPress uses SQL. An instruction issued by SQL to the database server to retrieve information is called a query. So WordPress uses MySQL queries to get data and uses it to generate the output, to generate the web pages or the information that's outputted on the web pages. Now, SQL injection is a vulnerability that gives an attacker complete access to your application's database through use of malicious SQL statements. How does it happen? When you have forms of some kind, or when you have a website workflow that allows user to input data in the input fields on your website, this type of attack can happen. For example, attacker can use SQL injections to alter data, manipulate data, or delete records, and stuff like that. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn on that slide. Weak and outdated code. This happens to us many times. WordPress core is updated regularly with security patches, with optimization code for speed, with functionality fixes, stuff like that. And then there's WordPress plugins and themes. Now, WordPress and plugins and themes could be something that you can use your custom themes or plugins, but most of the times you use plugins and themes that are generated or developed by third-party developers. One thing that you need to take care of is that when your WordPress core is updated, make sure that when the WordPress core release happens, when a new code is released for the WordPress core, make sure that is updated. If a WordPress plugin and theme is out of date, as in the developer does not update the code of the plugin or the theme for a long time, that is a few months, more than a few months or so, make sure that you change it with something that is more up to date, that has all the security patches that were released. Malware. Now, English is my second language, and no matter how hard I try, there's just one definition for certain things. As the name suggests, malware, which stands for malicious software, is a software intentionally designed to cause damage to a computer, a server, client, or computer network. So malicious software is something that's intended to harm your website. How does it happen? Through backdoors, pharma hacks, malicious redirects. There's these common WordPress malware issues that happen. Backdoors. A backdoor lets an attacker gain access to your environment through methods that you would rather consider unusual. FTP, File Transfer Protocol. FTP is like a software that you use when you use a client to connect to your website and access its file. That's FTP. SFTP, WP admin, and others. So hackers can get access to your website's FTP via command line or even GUI, graphical user interface. So these are some certain things that you have to consider in terms of backdoor. Pharma hacks. Pharma hack is a very common phenomenon, and it refers to a type of SEO spam, and I have seen it. There are companies or websites, they do not have a legit product or a service. They want to just get in front of the users in some way possible. So they hijack your website and try to get in front of the users in that way. Your website might show keywords from different illicit drugs or pharmaceutical companies, or whenever someone searches for illicit drug, your website shows up, stuff like that. So hijackers inject your site with malware and uses your site to sell illicit drugs, or at least bring them to their websites. Malicious redirects. This is also common, and I have seen this. If your website is infected, your website will be redirected to a suspicious website. You know, when you try to access a website and then you click a link on their website and it just automatically goes to a very spammy website, that's malicious redirects. Their website has been hacked. So this happened to me a few days ago. I was browsing someone's website, and their website was linking to some spammy website, which was giving some software downloads and stuff like that. But because we are used to this, we know about this scenario, I just closed that tab right away. And so when it redirects to a new website from your website with this malicious redirect, what it's trying to do is those attackers are trying to have users download a software, or just have them see a bunch of ads to just make some AdSense revenue, or click on something to run a script, anything like that. And you can find that in your htaccess file by looking at a code that looks something like this. Distributed denial of service. This type of attack entails shutting down a machine or a network, rendering it inaccessible to intended users. Essentially, when an attacker wants to take down a website, they flood it with traffic from different sources, not from one source, different sources. So it's hard to find where the attack is originating from. So you cannot just shut it down. They bottleneck your servers, and then it makes it difficult for your actual visitors to get the experience they want or the service they want. So cybercriminals motivated by money are less likely to target small websites or businesses, but they compromise vulnerable websites to build a botnet chain and attack large businesses. Sometimes, so something like a cyber attack that happened in 2016. I don't have all the information, but I'll link to that article that I read in my blog post. Now, let's take a look at some WordPress security measures that we can take in order to prevent the attacks or to overcome the secure WordPress vulnerabilities that we saw earlier. Preventing SQL injection. So as we discussed earlier, SQL injection attack basically takes place by interfering with your queries that an application makes to its database. Some of the steps to avoid this includes input field validation. When you validate the field with if you check that the field has the correct information, if the email field has the email, if the different input field validations that you do using different kinds of plugins or regular expressions to check if the information filled in the input field is correct or no. Removing unnecessary database functionalities. Encrypting confidential data. If there's some information that has to be confidential, make sure you encrypt those fields. In addition to that, you can install a security plugin like Securi or WordFence. Next one, denying access to sensitive files. Now, some files in the website are only meant to be used internally, but they are still exposed when you browse your website, or easily exposed when you try to click on a certain JavaScript file or a PHP file and stuff like that. Make sure that all those files are hidden or give an error page when you try to access them. You can use this list of things here and add it to your .htaccess file that's in your root directory of your website. So for example, this file contains how to redirect your users or password protect your admin page, protect specific directories, etc. So all this code is used to carry out these security measures that you can directly add into .htaccess file. Disable XML-RPC.php file. I don't have full grasp on this, but what it means is XML-RPC is a feature of WordPress that enables data to be transmitted with HTTP acting as the transport mechanism and XML as the encoding mechanism. So since WordPress isn't a self-enclosed system and occasionally needs to communicate with other systems, this was sought to handle the job. The biggest issue with XML-RPC is that there are some security concerns. The issues aren't with XML-RPC directly, but instead how the file can be used to enable brute force attacks on your website. So you can use this little code here to make sure that the XML-RPC file is denied access completely, or is only allowed to be accessed from a particular IP address or a range of IP address. To check if it's enabled on your website, you can go to this link that I listed here. Now, proper backup solutions. Now, this one, I think it's very obvious for anyone who has a WordPress website that a proper backup solution is a must. But there are certain things that are not obvious. Make sure that you backup regularly. Make sure that you store one backup on the server. Make sure that you store one backup separate from the server. Make sure that you have an easy backup restore plugin if possible. All those things. So, and you can use a plugin to do that, or you can use any other system that you have in place to ensure that you have proper backups done regularly. Sometimes the hosting also provides a solution for proper backup, and you can download the backups and keep it separate from the hosting. Removing your WordPress version number. This was something that I didn't know. It's a WordPress default feature to display WordPress version number, and it's a way to track the WordPress version number in your website. Basically, it does not affect you if your website is up to date. It affects you if you did not update the WordPress core in your website and there was a security patch released. So in that way, your website is vulnerable if there was a security patch released and you did not update your WordPress core. But if you're using an up-to-date version all the time, it does not affect you. So just to be safe, it's good to just hide your WordPress version number. So if anyone is looking to hack into your site, they cannot find out the WordPress version number. You can use these first two things in order to hide it from the front end, but in order to remove it completely, use the last one, that is, the version number will be completely removed from the head and the RSS feed. So you have to add this little bit of code in the functions.php to do that. So that's there. WordPress database prefix. I think most of us know this, and we make sure to change the WordPress database prefix from WP underscore to something that is more customized. So what happens is when we create a WordPress database, most of the times the database prefix would be WP underscore. And by adding something custom, we can take that security measure to so that no one can guess our the WordPress table names. So some hosting providers already do this for you, but it's also important to make sure that you do this on your own if your hosting provider does not take care of this. The WP includes file. A second layer of protection can be added where scripts are generally not intended to accessed by any user. One way to do this is to block those scripts using mode rewrite and in the .htaccess file. So you can add this little bit of code that will block scripts in your WP includes file, and that's one thing you can do in WP includes to avoid any kind of vulnerabilities in your WordPress website. WordPress admin page. There are a lot of things under the admin page, and I think most of us try to just change the admin page to something else, but there's a few more things that you could do. Limit login attempts. So using a security software like Sucuri or WordFence security or iTheme security, you can limit the login attempts. So when you're using something like when you're using a different application like a Google or Microsoft, you know how you get blocked after after trying to log in a few times. Same way, you can limit the login attempts for your WordPress website. It's great when you have so many users and when you have a few like editors and authors in your WordPress website. Change the login URL. You can use a plugin to do this. You can also just custom code it and change the WordPress login URL from WP admin or WP login to something else. Two-factor login authentication. Just like any other application like Google or Facebook, when you get an authentication notification on your phone, you can set that up. You can set that feature up on your website as well using WordFence or something like that. You can also, if you do not, as a backup, WordFence or any plugin like that will give you a list of backup codes. So if you do not have a phone on hand or something like that, you can use those backup codes to log in or to authenticate into your website after entering your password. Automatically log out idle users. This is great when you have more than one or two users, right? If you have users in your website that are editors, authors, other users than the admin users, or a few admin users. If a person is away from their desk for some time and they haven't logged in, their computer is not logged, or the page is idle for some time, or just automatically log them out, so there's no chances of someone trying to use their computer and logging into the website. Creating a strong password and create a guide for team members. So creating a strong password means try to create a password that is not easily readable, something that is an automatically generated password with alphanumeric numbers, and create a guide. If you have so many users in your WordPress website, just make sure that you create a guide for all of them to create strong passwords so that you enforce the rule within your team that everyone creates a strong password. Remove default username and username admin or user. Yes, this happens a lot. Sometimes in these new hosting providers I have seen, the system automatically generates a user called user or admin user. What you should do is add yourself as an admin and then log in with your admin username and password, and then delete that by default generated user, which is admin or user in most cases, and make sure that you just delete that automatically generated user. Whitelist IPs. You can whitelist IPs that can access your WP admin page or connect to your website through SSH and stuff like that in your htaccess file. And WordFence. You can use, so whatever we discussed earlier, most of these things are covered in this plugin called WordFence, where you can just ensure that all these little things, all these little vulnerabilities are taken care of in the website itself with this one plugin called WordFence. And there's a few other plugins like item security, Sucuri, that also take care of this. Keep the code up to date. Yes, we discussed this earlier. Out of date code is a problem when it comes to WordPress security. So make sure that if you're using third-party themes or plugins, they're up to date. They're updated regularly. If a third-party theme developer or plugin developer does not update their code for a few months or a year, make sure that you either change it or use something customized with the updated code in your WordPress website, and also update the WordPress core regularly. Better hosting solutions. Now, I think many people who are just getting a new WordPress website ignore this part, because many WordPress website users are just average people who just want something for their business because it's easy to use and easy to set up. They use hosting that is cheap, and you pay very less for it. But what happens is those hosting providers do not have the resources for optimization and security of your websites. If you're paying a bit more and using a good hosting provider, check what kind of security solutions they have. If you pay more to a hosting provider, chances are that they are using that to put in resources to secure your website and to optimize your website, the performance of your website. And a few other things. Disallow file editing in the dashboard. So by default, WordPress allows editing of the file in the WordPress dashboard itself. Block image hot linking. I don't have much information on this topic, but it's a very good topic that I found, blocking all image hot linking. It's when a user, it's when another website tries to use your website, tries to use your image that's hosted on your server. So it tries to use the website, but it tries to use, it tries to use the image, but it's another website will try to use your image that is hosted directly on your server. Install Google reCAPTCHA for form submissions. So Google reCAPTCHA is a way to ensure that the bots do not fill out your form, or some kind of there's no malware in the script. So use Google reCAPTCHA with your WordPress forms in order to track your form submissions. Install a spam protection plugin. Now, when we talked about SQL injection and all that malware stuff, spam is comments on the website is a place where a user can input stuff, and sometimes you can get malware in your website through the comments. So it's very important that you monitor your comments and protect it from spam. So use a plugin, or use a good plugin like Jetpack or something like that to protect your comments if you're allowing comments on your blog post. Also, there are some plugins that you can use for security and monitoring. WordPress, there's Health Check plugin that gives you a list of things that you can take care of in order to maintain the health of your website. There's iTheme Security, which is like WordFence. It's for WordPress security. It will ensure all those security measures that we talked about earlier. The iTheme Security and WordFence, both of them are very in-depth, and there are several tutorials on different websites that you can use in order to properly configure those two plugins. WordPress Security Audit Log. Yes, this is a very good plugin that will tell you which plugin was updated, which plugin is out of date, when a certain user logged in, for how long a user logged in, or if there's some kind of vulnerability in one of your plugins, stuff like that. So WordPress Security Audit Log is a very, very good plugin to keep handy. Besides technical reasons, there's a few other things that makes WordPress websites vulnerable, and it's that WordPress websites are easy to set up, easy to use. So what happens is most users of WordPress are just average users who want to just get in front of their viewers and just want to put content out. What happens is when they are just busy focusing on the front end and creating more content, they forget to do an extensive maintenance and take care of the website security. So that's one of the reasons WordPress websites are more vulnerable, because it's easy to set up, but it's also important to make sure that all the WordPress security vulnerabilities are taken care of. I think that's about it. Yes, yes. So, did someone comment? Okay. So I think that's about it for WordPress security issues and solutions. I tried to cover as much information I had. And if you have any questions, you can just comment or just let me know now and we can discuss now. You can also comment in the meetup group about the WordPress security issues and solutions. And if you want to read the blog post and if you want to get more information, the blog post is listed at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neha. This was really, really informative. I've found a lot I can use for sure in my own work. So thank you again for putting this together and for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.